The vast expanse of the galaxy was once a place of wonder and adventure, a shining example of hope and progress across the universe. But now it has fallen into the hands of a single tyrant, a merciless alien king whose rule stretches far and wide. His power is overwhelming, and his grip on the galaxy is tightening with each passing day. Worlds once flourishing with life and civilization now lay in ruins, their once proud cities reduced to smoldering ashes. The alien king's army, a monstrous force of AI-controlled warships, heavily armed battleships, and ruthless robotic soldiers, sweeps through the galaxy like a storm, crushing everything in its path. The camera cuts to scenes of desolate alien worlds. Entire cities have been leveled to the ground, leaving nothing but empty streets and shattered buildings. The air is thick with the smell of destruction, and the once vibrant skies are now filled with smoke and ash. Alien species who once thrived in peace are now broken, their homes destroyed, their people enslaved or wiped out. Fear is everywhere. As the camera zooms in on one of these devastated planets, a haunting voice fills the silence. The voice belongs to the alien king, his tone cold and unforgiving as he addresses the galaxy. "Bow before me or perish." His words echo through the empty streets of a fallen city, leaving an air of hopelessness that chills the bones. For those who dared resist, there was no escape. The alien king's fleet, unmatched in size and power, continues to sweep across the stars. Entire systems have fallen under his rule, and those who tried to stand against him have either been obliterated or forced into submission. No one can challenge him, for his technology is far beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. His AI armies know no mercy, and his warships are as invincible as they are ruthless. In the midst of this destruction, a new chapter of humanity's story begins. Deep within a forgotten corner of the galaxy lies an ancient military base, a relic from the past. It has been hidden for centuries, its purpose all but erased from the minds of the galaxy's current inhabitants. The base has remained dormant since the Great War, when humans last fought to protect their home and the universe. Humanity, once a force to be reckoned with, had been lost to time, thought to be wiped out in the aftermath of that devastating conflict. But deep inside the cold, abandoned walls of this forgotten base, humanity's last hope still slumbers. Thousands of human soldiers, scientists, and engineers, along with their state-of-the-art technology, lie in cryo sleep, their bodies frozen in time. They have been preserved in a dreamless stasis, their existence reduced to mere legend. It is a tale told in whispers, a myth, a distant memory of a time long past. However, fate has other plans. The silence of the base is suddenly broken by the sound of machinery coming to life. One by one, cryo chambers begin to open, releasing the humans inside. Their eyes flutter open for the first time in centuries, and they are greeted by a strange and unfamiliar world. Their minds are foggy as they adjust to the shock of awakening. Some feel disoriented, others groggy, but they all share one common realization. The galaxy they once knew is no more. The first to awaken is Captain Alexander Drake, a seasoned warrior from humanity's past. He stirs in his cryo chamber, his eyes snapping open as he takes in the strange surroundings. He is greeted by the cold hum of the base's artificial lighting and the mechanical sound of the cryo chamber doors opening. As he steps out, his feet hit the floor with a dull thud. He is alone for a moment, but soon, others begin to stir. Drake takes a deep breath, trying to shake off the grogginess of cryo sleep. His thoughts are slow to form, but one thing is clear: something is terribly wrong. The base, once a hub of human military might, is eerily quiet. There are no signs of life, no comforting sounds of activity, only the distant hum of systems powering up after their long dormancy. A sense of unease washes over him as he begins to explore the base. His eyes scan the dark corridors, and the weight of history presses down on him. This place was meant to protect humanity's legacy, but now it feels abandoned, forgotten by the very people it was built to defend. As he walks deeper into the base, the realization hits him with full force. The humans are no longer the dominant power they once were. They have awoken to a galaxy under siege, a galaxy where their enemies not only survived but thrived. The alien king, the tyrant who has brought the galaxy to its knees, has long since filled the power vacuum left by humanity's absence. Captain Drake, despite the confusion and shock of his awakening, understands the gravity of the situation. Humanity, once the shining hope of the galaxy, is now a mere footnote in the annals of history. He is horrified to learn that Earth, their home, has long been lost, a distant memory that has faded into myth. There is no going back. The war that once wiped out humanity has left them scattered, lost, and forgotten. But the fire of hope has not yet been extinguished. Drake realizes that they have one chance, and one chance only, to turn the tide. The war against the alien king and his overwhelming forces will not be easy. They are vastly outnumbered and outgunned, and the enemy's technology is far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. But Drake refuses to give up. He knows that the soldiers, scientists, and engineers still lying in cryo sleep hold the key to humanity's survival. They are the last of their kind, the final remnants of a once great civilization. Together, they must awaken and rise to face the enemy. The first few soldiers slowly regain their senses, their minds still foggy from the long sleep. But soon, they all realize what Drake already knows. This is humanity's last chance. The alien king has crushed everything in his path, and now they must fight back. They must reclaim their place in the galaxy. As the team assembles, they begin to make plans. Their first objective is to assess the strength of the enemy and gather any information on the alien king's whereabouts. But one thing is certain. They will have to do the impossible if they are to stand a chance against this near-invincible foe. The hope of the galaxy now rests on their shoulders, and time is running out. The room was cold and sterile, the air thick with the hum of old machinery. Captain Alexander Drake stood in the center of the room, his mind still foggy from the long sleep. His body ached as though he'd just run a marathon, and the memories of his life before the cryo sleep seemed distant and blurred. It was as if he had just woken from a bad dream. But the nightmare was real. He looked around at the faces of the soldiers and engineers who had woken alongside him. They, too, were disoriented, their eyes wide with confusion. Their hands shook as they tried to come to terms with the fact that they had awoken in a galaxy that was no longer theirs. The humans who had once stood proud as the dominant force in the universe were now the last remnants of a forgotten civilization. Captain Drake took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just a soldier. He was humanity's last hope, and the mission ahead of him was nothing short of impossible. He looked at the group before him, a ragtag team of survivors, men and women who had been thrust into the heart of a war they had never prepared for. Their faces were a mix of fear and determination, the realization of what they were up against slowly sinking in. "Listen up," Drake's voice rang out, steady but with a sense of urgency. "We don't know how much time we have, but every second counts. We're not the army we used to be. We don't have the numbers, we don't have the firepower, but we have something the alien king's forces will never understand: the will to survive." The room fell silent, every soldier's gaze fixed on him. For the first time since they had awoken, they felt a spark of hope. They were still human, and that was enough to give them the strength to fight. Drake continued, "Our first task is to gather intel. We need to understand what we're up against. We'll infiltrate an enemy stronghold and get the information we need. We've got cloaking devices, stealth tech, and everything we need to remain unseen. But remember, we're not invincible. Stick together, stay sharp, and we'll make it through this." The group nodded, the weight of the mission clear on their faces. They were about to enter enemy territory, and the odds of survival were slim. But what choice did they have? This was the galaxy's last chance. The team moved through the base like shadows, their movements silent and deliberate. The cloaking devices they wore made them nearly invisible, their figures blending into the darkness of the corridors. Their mission was clear: gather information on the alien king's forces and make it back without being detected. The fate of the galaxy rested on their success. They moved through the vast halls of the enemy stronghold, the silence only broken by the faint hum of the base's systems. The walls around them were made of cold, metallic surfaces, and the air was thick with the smell of burnt ozone. It was a far cry from the warmth and familiarity of the homes they once knew. The world they had left behind was gone, replaced by a dark, hostile universe where humans were no longer the top species. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the enemy stronghold, the team felt the growing tension. Every corner was a potential threat, every shadow a possible enemy. But they pressed on, knowing that if they failed, there would be no one left to stand against the alien king. But as they approached a secure data center, something went wrong. The air shifted, a faint hum filling the space. Captain Drake held up his hand, signaling the team to halt. He motioned for them to take cover, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in his bones. Before he could issue any orders, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. The team froze, pressing themselves into the shadows. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped. For a brief moment, everything was still. And then, chaos. A burst of bright red laser fire shot across the room, narrowly missing Drake's shoulder. The enemy had found them. The cloaking devices were no longer effective against the sudden onslaught. Robot sentries, sleek, mechanical killing machines, emerged from hidden panels in the walls, their red eyes glowing menacingly. They began firing without hesitation, the sound of lasers piercing the air like 1,000 knives. "Fall back," Drake shouted, grabbing one of his team members by the arm and pulling him to safety. "Move, move, move." The team scattered, dodging incoming fire as they sprinted down the narrow corridors. The walls seemed to close in around them, the mechanical soldiers pursuing relentlessly. Every step felt like an eternity, the sounds of clanging metal and the sizzling of laser fire filling the air. But there was no time to think. They had to survive. They had to get out. Drake led the way, his military training kicking in as he navigated the maze of corridors. He could feel the heat from the laser blasts searing the air around him, and the smell of burning metal was overwhelming. The robots were fast, too fast, but they were relentless, their programming giving them no room for mercy. At every turn, the humans fought back. They fired their weapons, taking down a few of the robots, but it wasn't enough. The enemy forces were overwhelming. The humans were outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered, but they fought with every ounce of strength they had. As they reached an intersection in the corridors, the team was met with another ambush. More robotic soldiers emerged from the walls, cutting off their escape. The humans fought back, but they were surrounded. The odds were against them. Drake knew that if they didn't act quickly, they wouldn't make it out alive. He scanned the area, his mind racing. There was no time to regroup. They had to make a break for it. "Head for the ventilation shafts," Drake ordered. Now, without hesitation, the team split up, sprinting toward the narrow air vents at the end of the corridor. The robots fired after them, but the humans were faster. They ducked into the shafts, their bodies slipping into the narrow tunnels just in time to avoid the next barrage of laser fire. For a moment, they were safe. The shafts were cramped, and the air inside was stale, but it gave them the chance to catch their breath. They had made it out, but just barely. As they regrouped in the ventilation system, Drake's heart was pounding in his chest. They had lost several soldiers in the escape, their sacrifice weighing heavily on his mind. But they had made it. They had gathered the intel they needed. And more importantly, they had survived. "Let's move," Drake said, his voice firm despite the exhaustion that threatened to overtake him. "We've got what we came for. Now we go back and figure out our next move. The fight has only just begun." The team nodded, their faces grim but determined. They had been tested, and they had come out the other side. The galaxy might have been under siege, but humanity wasn't finished yet. They would fight. They would rise. And they would take back what was theirs. The tension in the human fleet was palpable. After their harrowing escape from the enemy stronghold, they had regrouped and fortified their defenses. The intel they had gathered was invaluable, but it also carried a heavy price. Captain Alexander Drake knew that every moment they spent hiding would bring them closer to their enemies. The alien king would not let the humans survive for long. He had already crushed countless civilizations. Humanity's return would not be forgiven. News of the human resurgence quickly spread across the galaxy, reaching the ears of the alien king. His eye-controlled warships had raised entire star systems, and no one had dared to challenge his rule. But now, there was a new threat on the horizon, and he could not allow the humans to rise again. He ordered a massive fleet of warships to be mobilized, their sleek, menacing forms cutting through the black void of space. The fleet was more than enough to crush the small human resistance. He would put an end to this nuisance once and for all. Captain Drake stood on the bridge of the human flagship, his eyes scanning the stars. The deck was alive with activity, engineers and soldiers rushing to their stations, preparing for the fight of their lives. They knew the odds were against them, but they had no other choice. The human fleet, though smaller and equipped with outdated technology, was ready to face the alien threat. "How long until the enemy fleet reaches us?" Drake asked, his voice steady despite the rising pressure. "Approximately 30 minutes, sir," replied Lieutenant Bonner, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "We're outnumbered, and our fleet is no match for theirs in a direct confrontation." Drake nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be smarter. They might have the numbers, but we have the advantage of surprise. We're going to hit them before they even know what's coming." The crew worked feverishly to prepare the fleet for battle. The cloaking devices on their warships, although far from perfect, would give them a chance to strike first. The humans' warships had been rebuilt using old technology, but they were still formidable. Advanced targeting systems were installed, and the smaller, faster ships would be key in executing the plan. The plan was risky. It was the only way to stand a chance. The humans would use the cloaked ships to infiltrate the alien fleet, striking with precision and speed, then retreating before the enemy could react. It would be a hit-and-run battle, relying on speed, tactics, and the element of surprise. The moment of truth arrived. The enemy fleet emerged from the depths of space, a swarm of ships descending like a storm. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, their engines glowing with power. The sight of them was enough to make even the bravest soldier's heart race. But the humans would not back down. This was their chance to fight back. "All ships, prepare for the attack," Captain Drake ordered, his voice calm but resolute. "This is our one shot. Make it count." The human fleet, though outmatched in terms of firepower, moved swiftly and silently into position. Their cloaking devices engage, rendering them invisible to the alien fleet's sensors. As the humans advanced, they could see the massive alien warships looming in the distance, unaware of the threat closing in on them. "Lock onto the enemy's lead ships," Lieutenant Bonner instructed, his fingers flying over the controls. "Prepare to fire on my mark." The tension in the air was unbearable as the human fleet moved closer to the enemy. The seconds felt like hours. Every soldier's breath held in anticipation. They were ready. The moment was at hand. "Mark!" Bonner shouted. In an instant, the human ships decloaked, their weapons firing with deadly precision. Bright beams of energy shot through the darkness of space, tearing through the alien fleet. The surprise attack was a success. The alien ships were caught off guard, their defenses scrambling to react. But the humans were already retreating, their ships darting away at impossible speeds, just as the alien warships attempted to counterattack. "Orbital bombardments incoming," one of the crew members shouted. The sky above them erupted in a brilliant display of destruction as the alien fleet launched a counterstrike, unleashing waves of missiles and energy blasts at the humans' positions. Explosions lit up the darkness, and shockwaves rattled the human ships. The battle raged on, a chaotic mess of laser fire, explosions, and evasive maneuvers. Human ships darted in and out of the fray, their advanced targeting systems allowing them to land devastating blows on the alien ships. But the alien fleet was massive, and their numbers were overwhelming. For every alien ship destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. As the battle continued, the human soldiers aboard their ships fought with everything they had. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Drake led his crew with determination, barking orders and making split-second decisions that kept the human fleet in the fight. But even with their advanced tactics, the humans were slowly being pushed back. It was then that the worst happened. Lieutenant Bonner, one of Drake's closest friends and a seasoned soldier, was leading a group of soldiers on a boarding mission to disable one of the alien warships. The mission was going well, too well. The human team had infiltrated the enemy ship's interior, planting explosives and securing critical systems. But as they were making their way back to their own ship, disaster struck. An alien drone squadron ambushed them, overwhelming their position. The humans fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Bonner, realizing the only way to ensure the team's survival, made the ultimate sacrifice. "Go," he shouted to his team, his voice full of resolve. "Get back to the ship. I'll hold them off." Without hesitation, Bonner activated the explosive charges, setting them to go off in a matter of seconds. The blast would take out the entire alien ship, but Bonner would not make it out alive. As the team made their escape, Bonner stood his ground, fighting off the alien drones long enough for the others to reach safety. The explosion rocked the battlefield, the shockwave reverberating through space. The alien warship was destroyed in a massive fireball, and Bonner's sacrifice was not in vain. But the cost was high. The humans had lost one of their bravest soldiers. As the human fleet regrouped after the attack, Drake stood on the bridge, staring out at the wreckage of the battle. The alien forces were still formidable, but they had made a dent in the enemy's numbers. The humans had struck first, and the alien king had felt the sting of their defiance. But the victory came at a heavy cost. Bonner's death weighed heavily on Drake's heart. It was a painful reminder that in war, every victory was paid for with blood. The loss of Bonner fueled the humans' resolve. They had lost too much already. They could not stop now. "We fight on," Captain Drake said, his voice low but filled with determination. For Bonner, for humanity, and for the galaxy. The battle was far from over, but the humans had proven they could stand against the alien king. They had made their mark. Now, it was time to finish what they had started. The aftermath of the battle with the alien king's forces had left the human fleet in a state of quiet desperation. Although they had scored a significant victory, the cost had been immense. Lieutenant Bonner, one of Captain Alexander Drake's closest friends and most trusted officers, had made the ultimate sacrifice. The weight of his loss hung heavily over the team. Each member of the crew carried the memory of Bonner's bravery, and it pushed them to fight even harder. But despite their resilience, they knew the odds were still stacked against them. The alien king would not take their defiance lightly. As Captain Drake stared out at the stars, his thoughts were interrupted by a transmission that would change the course of their mission forever. The message came from an ancient human colony that had been long forgotten, a place that hadn't been heard from in centuries. According to the message, there was something on that colony that could potentially turn the tide of the war. "Captain, you need to see this," Lieutenant Harris said, approaching him with a grim look on his face. Harris handed Drake a data pad, showing the transmission from the lost colony. "It's a weapon," Drake muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "An AI-powered supercomputer capable of destroying entire fleets. It was thought to be a myth, a legend passed down from the early days of the war. But now it's our only hope." Drake's heart raced. This discovery was both a blessing and a curse. The weapon was powerful enough to destroy the alien king's fleet, but it was also dangerous, too dangerous. They had no idea how to fully control it, or even what kind of risks it carried. But at this point, the humans had no other choice. They had to retrieve it, no matter what the cost. The team's morale was already fragile after the loss of Bonner, and the thought of confronting an unknown weapon only added to their anxiety. But there was no time to waste. The enemy was closing in, and humanity's survival rested on this one mission. "Gather the team," Drake ordered, his voice hard and determined. "We're going to the colony, and we're bringing that weapon back." The journey to the lost colony was long and treacherous. The coordinates sent through the transmission led them to a forgotten world on the edge of the galaxy, a place that had once been a thriving hub of human civilization. But now it was a desolate wasteland, a shell of its former self. The colony had been abandoned, its people wiped out during the early days of the war with the alien king's forces. The buildings were crumbling, and the streets were empty. The only signs of life were the patrols of alien soldiers and the constant hum of robotic sentries. As the humans approached the colony's remains, the first signs of danger appeared. Alien patrols, heavily armed and relentless, roamed the planet's surface. These soldiers were a mix of aliens and robotic drones, their purpose to ensure that no one entered the colony. The humans had to be cautious. One wrong move, and their presence would be detected, and the entire mission could be compromised. Captain Drake led his team through the ruined streets of the colony, their cloaking devices active, rendering them invisible to the enemy. The tension in the air was palpable. Every step felt like a risk, every breath a potential death sentence. They had no choice but to move forward. The weapon they sought could be the key to humanity's survival, but they had no idea what dangers awaited them. The first encounter came sooner than expected. A robotic sentry, its glowing red eyes scanning the ruins, turned a corner and spotted them. The team immediately engaged, their weapons blazing as they fought to take it down. The battle was intense, with sparks flying as the sentry's armor was torn apart by the human guns. But the sentry was relentless, and its mechanical arms swung with deadly precision. It was only after a fierce firefight that they were able to disable it. The victory was short-lived. As they continued deeper into the colony, the humans encountered more robotic drones and alien soldiers. The enemy forces seemed to be everywhere, and the closer they got to the weapon, the more dangerous their path became. There was no room for error. Each battle took its toll on the team, pushing them to the edge of exhaustion. But it wasn't just the physical danger that weighed heavily on Captain Drake and his team. The emotional weight of Bonner's death hung over them like a dark cloud. Every time they fought, every time they survived another ambush, it felt like they were fighting not just for their own lives, but for Bonner's memory. Drake could still hear Bonner's voice, urging them to fight on, to never give up. "Keep moving," Drake said, his voice low but firm. "For Bonner, we can't let his sacrifice be in vain." The team pressed on, the fear of failure driving them forward. The colony, once a thriving center of human life, was now a dark, hollow shell of its former self. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the streets were littered with the remnants of an old civilization. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant sounds of the alien patrols. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the colony. Hidden beneath a crumbling skyscraper, in a deep underground bunker, lay the weapon they had been searching for. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, an enormous supercomputer, its vast circuits and glowing screens still operational, despite being abandoned for so long. The AI inside was ancient, its algorithms long forgotten, but it was still powerful, capable of turning the tide of the war in humanity's favor. But just as they thought they had succeeded, disaster struck. The moment they activated the supercomputer, the colony's defense systems sprang to life. A massive alarm blared through the underground bunker, and the sound of approaching alien forces echoed through the walls. The humans had triggered a fail-safe, and now they were trapped. "We need to move now," Drake shouted, his voice urgent. The team scrambled to retrieve the data they needed from the supercomputer, but the countdown to the alien forces' arrival was already ticking. They had no time left. The team fought their way back through the colony, the AI-powered weapon in tow. But the alien forces were closing in, and the human soldiers were exhausted from the brutal battles they had already fought. Every step was a struggle, every battle a test of their willpower. Despite the overwhelming odds, Captain Drake's team managed to escape, the weapon in hand. But the mission had come at a high cost. As they made their way back to the ship, the realization hit them. This was humanity's last chance. If they didn't succeed, everything would be lost. Drake could only hope that the weapon they had recovered would be enough. The journey ahead was still perilous, and the final battle against the Alien King's forces loomed large. But for the first time in a long while, Drake felt a flicker of hope. They had found something that could defeat their enemies. They had found their salvation. The air was thick with anticipation as Captain Alexander Drake and his team prepared for their final assault on the Alien King. They had come a long way, from the discovery of the weapon to the brutal battles they had fought in the Forgotten Colony. Now, with the AI-powered supercomputer in their possession, humanity's last hope lay in the balance. The team had lost so much, and yet they held on to the belief that they could defeat the Alien King once and for all. The journey toward the alien capital was treacherous. The human fleet, small in number and limited in resources, approached the heart of the enemy empire with caution. But their mission was clear. They had to end the war. They had to strike at the very core of the Alien King's power. As they neared the capital, the sight of the alien fleet sent a chill down their spines. It was a vast, terrifyingly advanced force, far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The enemy's ships were sleek, massive, and bristling with weapons. Their firepower was overwhelming, and the odds of victory seemed insurmountable. The Alien King's fleet was the pinnacle of technological warfare. AI-controlled ships, energy shields, and drones designed for one purpose: to destroy all who opposed them. But Captain Drake wasn't deterred. He knew that humanity had something the alien forces didn't: heart. As they closed in on the capital, Captain Drake's voice rang out over the comms. "This is it, team. We've come too far to turn back now. We fight for humanity and for every life lost. Stay sharp and remember what we're fighting for." The final battle began in a blaze of chaos. The human warships, though smaller and less advanced than the alien fleet, were fast and agile. Using the cloaking devices and stealth technology they had perfected, they darted through asteroid fields, slipping in and out of the shadows like ghosts. The enemy's massive warships struggled to track them as laser beams and missiles lit up the void, creating a brilliant and terrifying spectacle in the vastness of space. The battle raged on, and the air was filled with the sounds of explosions, shattering shields, and the hum of powerful weapons being fired. The human fleet was outnumbered, but their strategy was different from the alien forces. The aliens relied on their technology, on their vast fleets, and AI-controlled ships. The humans, however, used their adaptability, their ingenuity, and their emotional resolve. As the battle continued, Captain Drake's warship, the Defiant, weaved through the alien lines, taking out one ship after another. The enemy's AI war machines, designed to anticipate and outmaneuver their opponents, found themselves at a disadvantage. They couldn't predict the humans' actions. The humans weren't following a set program or algorithm. They were thinking, adapting, and fighting with everything they had. Despite the chaos surrounding him, Captain Drake remained focused on the task at hand. His target was the Alien King himself, the mastermind behind this ruthless war. If he could take down the king, the rest of the alien forces would crumble. But to reach the king, Drake had to navigate through a labyrinth of enemy ships and drones. His warship was outgunned, and the crew was exhausted. Every move was a gamble, every shot a risk. In the heart of the alien capital, the alien king's flagship hovered like a massive fortress, surrounded by an impenetrable wall of drones and defense systems. The king's ship was unlike anything the humans had ever seen, a monolithic structure with advanced AI that controlled every aspect of its defenses. It was a fortress designed to withstand any attack. Drake knew that this was where the battle would be won or lost. He ordered the Defiant to break through the enemy lines and head straight for the flagship. The crew, though weary, responded with a renewed sense of purpose. The final assault was on, and there was no turning back now. As the Defiant neared the flagship, Captain Drake and his crew fought with everything they had. The ship was battered and damaged, but they pushed forward. Every member of the crew knew that this was their last chance to end the war. The human spirit, which had been tested and broken countless times, refused to yield. Their will to survive, to protect their families and their future, was unbreakable. Finally, Drake's warship broke through the outer defenses of the flagship, and the crew prepared for the ultimate confrontation. The moment had come. Captain Drake would face the alien king himself. Inside the flagship, the alien king watched with cold detachment as the humans advanced. He had watched them struggle, fight, and resist, but he never believed they could truly threaten his reign. His over-reliance on AI and advanced technology had made him arrogant. He believed that no force in the galaxy could stand against him. But now, standing on the bridge of his flagship, he began to sense something he had never expected: fear. Drake boarded the flagship, the atmosphere tense and electric. The final confrontation was at hand. The alien king, a towering figure clad in metallic armor, stood before him. His eyes glowed with the light of his advanced technology, but there was a flicker of doubt in them now. "You think you can defeat me, human?" The alien king boomed, his voice reverberating throughout the ship. "I have destroyed entire worlds. What can you do against me?" Drake's voice was calm, but filled with determination. "I don't need to defeat you. I just need to disable your fleet. The rest will fall apart." The alien king sneered. "You think your primitive technology can do that?" Captain Drake didn't respond. Instead, he activated the AI-powered supercomputer they had recovered from the lost colony. The supercomputer hummed to life, its circuits glowing with an intense energy. The AI inside it, once thought to be a myth, had the power to turn the tide of the war. As the alien king's fleet approached, the supercomputer sent out a signal, disabling the alien ship systems one by one. The alien fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, began to falter. Their weapons systems shut down, their shields flickered and failed, and their drones lost power. The alien king's flagship, the heart of his empire, began to crumble under the weight of its own technology. As the alien king watched in disbelief, Captain Drake took his final shot. With the fleet disabled and the king's ship in disarray, humanity's final strike had come. A powerful missile, guided by the supercomputer's precise targeting systems, slammed into the heart of the alien king's flagship. The explosion was catastrophic. The alien king, once an unstoppable force, was now nothing more than a memory. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. The human fleet had suffered immense losses, and many lives had been sacrificed. But as Captain Drake watched the debris of the alien king's flagship float in the cold emptiness of space, he knew that humanity had survived. They had defeated the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. And for the first time in a long time, hope began to return. The final battle had been fought. The war was over. Humanity had won. The silence that followed the destruction of the alien king's fleet was unlike anything Captain Alexander Drake had ever experienced. The once dominant threat to humanity had been reduced to a memory, and the galaxy was left in a state of stunned disbelief. No one had expected this outcome. For centuries, the humans had been seen as nothing more than a primitive species, their technology outdated and their armies weak. Yet, against all odds, they had emerged victorious. The tide of war had shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Drake stood at the helm of the Defiant, gazing out at the stars. His mind raced as he processed the weight of everything they had accomplished. The war had taken everything from them, their friends, their families, their homes. But in the end, they had won. Humanity had proven that no matter how overwhelming the odds, they could overcome anything. Their strength was not in their technology or their numbers, but in their determination to survive. The human fleet, though battered and bruised, had emerged from the final battle stronger than ever. In the wake of their victory, the ships that had once seemed outdated now looked like symbols of hope. They were the last bastion of humanity, the living proof that the human spirit could endure even in the darkest of times. Now, as they looked ahead to the future, they saw a galaxy that was once again open to them. As the Defiant cruised through the calm expanse of space, Captain Drake turned to his crew. They had been through so much together: loss, sacrifice, and victory. Each one of them had played a part in this improbable success, and now they were all part of something greater than themselves. "We did it," Lieutenant Rena, one of Drake's most trusted officers, said quietly, her voice filled with both relief and disbelief. "We actually did it. The war is over." Drake nodded, his face expressionless, but his heart swelling with pride. "We did, but we're not done yet. This victory is only the beginning. There's so much more to do." The crew nodded, understanding the weight of his words. The galaxy was vast, and while they had defeated the alien king, there were still many challenges ahead. The human race had earned its place in the stars, but now it was time to prove that they could thrive. The remnants of the alien empires were still out there, and new threats would inevitably rise. But humanity had something that no one could take away: the will to fight, to rebuild, and to rise from the ashes of destruction. As the human fleet traveled toward the homeworld, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The once mighty alien king's forces had fallen, and now it was time for humanity to take its rightful place in the galaxy. The war had been long, but the victory had been hard-earned. The crew of the Defiant knew that their work was far from over, but the hope for a better future burned brightly in their hearts. Months passed since the final battle, and the rebuilding began. The human colonies that had been destroyed by the alien king's wrath were slowly brought back to life. New cities rose from the ashes, and old alliances were reforged. Humanity's strength lay not just in their ability to fight, but in their resilience and their ability to rebuild. Every day brought new challenges, but every day also brought new opportunities for growth and progress. Drake and his team remained at the forefront of this new era. They had earned the respect of the galaxy's most advanced species, who once saw humans as nothing more than a nuisance. Now, those same species looked to humanity for guidance and leadership. The human success against the alien king had shown the galaxy that there was more to them than met the eye. Their tenacity and resourcefulness had earned them a place among the stars. On Earth, the rebuilding efforts were underway as well. The planet had been scared by the war, but the human spirit was unbreakable. The survivors, having witnessed the triumph of their people, were determined to restore their world to its former glory. And while the scars of the war would never fade, the hope for a brighter future was stronger than ever. Captain Drake, now hailed as a hero, stood on the balcony of the newly rebuilt Earth Command Center, looking out over the planet. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape. He could see the bustling cities, the rebuilt infrastructure, and the people who had once feared for their survival, now filled with hope for the future. "Do you think they'll ever stop looking at us as the underdogs?" Lieutenant Rena asked, stepping beside him. "I mean, after everything we've been through, we're no longer the weak ones." Drake smiled, his gaze never leaving the horizon. "I don't think it matters. The galaxy knows what we're capable of now. We don't need their approval. All that matters is that we're here. We're alive, and we're going to keep pushing forward." The final scene took place on a distant world, a new human colony that had been established as a symbol of humanity's rebirth. The colony was small, but it was growing rapidly, filled with the promise of a new beginning. It was a place where the human race could once again thrive, where the memories of the war could fade into the background, and where the future could be built with hope and determination. Drake stood with his team, watching as settlers moved about the colony. The colony's architecture was simple but efficient, with tall structures built to withstand the harsh conditions of the planet. There was a sense of unity among the people, a shared purpose that had been forged through the fires of war. They had survived the alien king's reign, and now they were ready to build something better. As the sun set on the new colony, Captain Drake couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had come so far, and their journey was far from over. They had proven that they could fight, that they could survive, and most importantly, that they could rebuild. The future was theirs to shape, and they would do it with the same resilience and determination that had seen them through the darkest times. The camera zoomed out, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond the new colony. The stars twinkled in the distance, a reminder that the galaxy was vast and full of possibilities. Earth's moon hung in the sky, casting a gentle glow on the colony below. It was a beautiful, peaceful sight, a symbol of humanity's rebirth. Drake's voice echoed in the background as the scene faded to black. This is just the beginning. Humanity's story is far from over. We've only just begun to write it. The closing shot lingered on the moon, bathed in the soft light of a new dawn, signaling that humanity had a future ahead of them, and the galaxy was theirs to explore.